Joe Mullings from 160 Studios, and I've got the leadership crew from Inspire MD in studio today. Gentlemen, thanks for coming along. Marvin?
Thank you.
Shane?
Thanks for having us.
Morning. Thank you.
Good to see you here. And Pete?
Great to be here.
So this has been a really interesting technology that I've tracked for a couple of years now. You and I have been playing close to each other on this for a couple of years, and finally we're getting to play in the same sandbox together. And I'm also pumped because it's a South Florida company.
Right.
Right? And shout out to South Florida. But the genesis of the organization and the history of it, if you could just share and open it up.
Yeah, so Inspire MD was founded in a very classic innovation model in Tel Aviv. The company was built around trying to solve unique problems for revascularization, and the unique characteristic of our stent technology is we make a mesh outer layer that prevents embolic reaction from occurring. Seems like a simple concept, but certainly difficult to do. And the genesis of the company was to build a platform, and they focused on the coronary space for STEMI. But this technology was always best suited for carotids. And we find ourselves in a really unique situation because the carotid market is shifting exponentially, very quickly to a stent-first approach. It's the last vascular bed in the body that is still surgery first, and endarterectomy is still the standard of care. And there's a lot of reasons for that, which we'll chat about today. But I think we find ourselves having invested in a platform when no one else did, and we solve a really unique problem in keeping embolic reactions from happening post-procedurally. Keeping the plaque where it belongs is really the fundamental physics of it. When you stent an artery, you create a cheese grating effect in an open cell technology. And with the proximity to the brain, when you have plaque prolapsing through those stent struts, you have strokes that occur post-procedurally. So we're keeping the plaque where it belongs through this innovation. And there's a lot of reasons why timing was not perfect and why investment in the space overall was dormant for many, many years. But we took a bet, placed a big bet on continuing to invest in the technology, and now everything's come together in a unique way. So we feel like we're in a really good spot to transform this segment of the market.
And again, an example of another fantastic technology coming out of Israel.
Absolutely. Coming
Coming here, landing in the US, and bravo to, and I want to chat with Shane next, but bravo to the leadership team in Israel for giving the reins over to an American team.
Right.
Because too many times when you have an OUS company, not just an Israeli company come in the US, they try and do it from afar. And handing it over to a leadership team like this, I think is great.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. We have a remarkable group of folks in Israel that still operate as our base of operation. And as we get closer to FDA approval, we're going to transition base camp to the US, but continue to leverage all the best of what we have around the world. And so we're really proud of our group overall.
Right.
Yeah.
Shane, endovascular market, you've got great history there, long legs in that space, and it looks like there's a little bit of an evolution going on there.
Yeah, well, Marvin mentioned it's an exciting time to be in the carotid intervention world, and there are probably a lot of people watching this that know it's been a long time since we've been able to say that. And you know, I personally remember, many of the people watching will remember that 20 years ago, all the big cardiovascular companies were investing in the carotid space because it was going to be the next big segment of the cardiovascular market. So Guidant got the first approval 20 years ago, and Abbott a year later, and then Abbott bought Guidant. But then the other companies, Medtronic, Johnson & Johnson when they owned Cordis, and Boston Scientific, all got carotid stents approved in the 2000s. But what we didn't see was CMS opening up coverage. So the market never developed like we all expected it to. And after the third time through the CMS NCD process, the big companies, I was at one of them at the time, stopped investing in the space. So as Marvin said, Inspire MD saw that opportunity. We have a technology that's really tailor-made for carotid intervention. And now fast forward 14 years, the data has caught up. And CMS just last year in October opened up coverage for carotid stenting, whether that's through a TCAR approach or a traditional transfemoral carotid stent approach. And you know, we talk often, it's about timing, team, technology. And the timing really couldn't be better to enter the carotid space with a new technology. The team, we're all excited to be here to get to build it. And then the technology is what really differentiates us.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to stay in the fight long enough, right? And be standing in the right place when the door opens, which you did.
Yeah.
Pete, you're one of the leaders here, and we're getting to work closely with you and your team, and the technology itself is impressive as heck, and you're fired up about that because that tech will bring great people to the team.
Yep. Yeah, that's a big part of it, and there are a number of reasons. I've been with the organization for about 6 months, and I've been doing this a long time, like members of this panel here. One of the reasons why I'm here is because of the technology. And let's face it, when you look at the med tech space, innovation is a word that's overused. Just because you make something blue to green or you tweak it 45 degrees doesn't mean it's innovative. We absolutely have innovative technology, whether it's because of the micronet itself or the open cell stent. Those are real features that have an impact, save patients' lives, et cetera. Marvin and Shane can really talk to it in more detail, but the technology really is, again, a big part of why I'm here, and it is innovative, and the technology is backed up by data. Now, when we talk to people about it, they can't help but be excited to join the organization because they can see it, it makes a lot of sense, and people are excited about it. And as we're interviewing for the next layer of leadership here, there's no doubt people are digging into it and excited about it as well.
Yeah, and one of the things that we run into in our firm in building companies, especially early companies, that had a technology that seems like it came out of the gate strong, that category, and then all of a sudden fell flat for whatever reason, whether it was reimbursement, lack of performance, poor data. But the data's been substantial with what you've got right now.
Yeah, I think that's the foundation, Joe. At the end of the day, we have the best-in-class data. It's great for patients because we've demonstrated sub 1% complication rates, which is first of its kind, best in class. In context to endarterectomy or first-generation stents that all fall in the, let's call it 4% complication rate. Doesn't seem like a big number unless you fall between those cracks. And the outcomes are generally stroke or really bad things happening. So the evidence that we've built is unmatched. And the unique part of this company is we did what many companies did, which we went to Europe under CE mark initially. We cut our teeth there. We learned a lot about the technology. We studied it in peer review in over 1,800 patients in 9 different studies. And we've sold over 58,000 stents globally. So this is not a startup project, a science project per se. We've learned a lot about what it takes to be successful, but this entree into the US market, like it is for many companies, is really the game changer for us. It's where the market is, both from a top line and just market dynamic. So we're really excited about making this next move.
Shane, when you think about this as the commercial lead on this, you've got some changes coming, right? Workflow is always a change, procedure is always a change, trying to disrupt current standard of care. What goes through your mind as you're architecting this approach to the market?
Well, as we've talked about, carotid stenting is not a new procedure. And there are a lot of people out there with a lot of expertise in this area, a lot of people who launched the first products 15 to 20 years ago, and a lot of people that are really enthusiastic about having a next generation technology to support. So I found the inbound interest to be very strong from people looking to join the team. And I think just talking about that technology a little bit, it's important to remember why we stent carotid arteries. It's a different reason than why we stent elsewhere in the body. When we're putting in a coronary stent or a stent in one of the peripheral arteries, we tend to be treating occlusive disease, which means we're trying to reestablish blood flow to the end organ, the end muscle, and reperfuse. It's not exactly why we do it in carotids. In carotids, we're trying to stabilize a plaque so it doesn't embolize and cause a stroke. So the whole function of the implant that we're putting in is to provide as much coverage, as much scaffolding and protection to the brain as possible. So when you look at our stent, and we've mentioned it a few times now, we have this unique micronet mesh that goes on the outside of the stent that it doesn't take deep expertise in carotid stenting to look at it and say that should do a better job of stabilizing a plaque and preventing stroke than that same stent would if we took the mesh off of it. And that's essentially what the other products in the market look like. So I think people that know the space, that are excited about stroke prevention, that are excited about carotid stenting, they take one look at it and their gut tells them how this product should work. And then it's confirming what they already think when they see the data that Marvin mentioned. So in terms of putting the team together, again, I talk to people every week who, I connected with a physician a week or two ago, and upon first meeting he said, I've been waiting for 20 years for your product or one like it. And I get a lot of that, which is really exciting.
How did, I know it came out of Israel, so this might not be the group to ask here, but my guess is you'll probably know the answer. How did it take 20 years for this to declare itself, this mesh on the stent structure, and nobody else thought of it before?
I can take that one.
Take it.
The big companies thought of it. They just didn't invest in it. I was leading global marketing for one of them in the late 2000s, and we had a next generation carotid stent program and a next generation, kind of the idea on a PowerPoint slide. And we knew that if we put a permeable mesh on the outside of a carotid stent, it would do a better job. But the big companies stopped innovating and stopped investing because the market never developed. CMS coverage didn't expand, so the juice wasn't worth the squeeze for the big companies, and they all stopped innovating. I think when I was at Certainly knew this would work. I think the other ones probably did too, just chose not to invest. So really credit to the InspireMD team for continuing to develop it through kind of the dark ages of carotid stenting, and now the timing couldn't be better to bring it to market.
Yeah, no matter how good the technology was, as we well know, unless reimbursement was in place to catalyze this whole shift to a stent-first approach, it was still going to be a limited market. So it goes back to the probabilities of success and making sure that each of those are tapped along the way. So again, we've found ourselves in a really good position from all those different perspectives to be able to attack the market.
Pete, the U.S. readiness, is some of it's falling on your shoulders besides Shane's on all your shoulders, but yeah. Shane's commercially, but you operationally and rest of effort.
Yeah.
So what are you looking to lead out over the next 6-12 months?
Yeah, it's an exciting time for sure, and you're right, Joe. We are going to be in Florida, most likely Broward County. So first and foremost, we need to set up our U.S. headquarters. And we want that headquarters to really be a customer-facing center. So we want to train surgeons there, we want to train our sales force, so we want to have it the look and feel of the organization. And frankly, that's where some of the culture will start to build, overall. So getting that set up, I think, is job one. We are going to do manufacturing in the United States as well. We are going to take what the job that they do in Tel Aviv and bring it to the United States. And that's simply because our volumes are going to go up exponentially as we enter the market. So we have to have U.S. Manufacturing. So headquarters, manufacturing are the big deal. Having a real turnkey facility, I would say. And then it's the people. I mean, we need the people to really drive this thing. I think we've got the innovation, we've got the focus, and as Shane said, we need the people. So right now, my role is to find people to really help step into this market, lead this market, and build InspireMD, US. And frankly, that's one of the reasons why we're ending up in Florida. There is just a very good talent pool here in the southeastern part of the state. So it's all those efforts and a lot of other little things in there. But yes, we have 6, 9, 12 months to get it ready to launch. So there is a weight on the shoulders for sure. Yeah, in a good way.
We've got an expectation that if things go according to plan, we're going to have FDA approval. We're calling it first half of 25. With a little bit of luck, it may be sooner. And this guy right here is going to be taking a lot of orders that have to be filled and shipped and implanted properly. And so, I think the sleepless nights we have are all built around execution to launch and growth, and those are good problems to have. But we've got a good team, but we have to have more talent.
One of the things that I always chat about when I've had the fortunate privilege to build more than 900 startups in my 30 years doing this, and I don't think there's been a time where it's been so clear that the neuro space is the darling at the dance right now. People are saying that the brain is the new heart, and we all know what cardiac did over the last 20 years. I think we've saturated that market with technology, every single corner of it, but neuro is really setting up to be the new brain. And so this really sets up InspireMD extraordinarily well, because carotids are the gateway to the brain. So this ends up being a prize for somebody out there. So what are you thinking about as you execute on this and you build your team? Where are you going to be reaching, and what categories are you going to be reaching out of as you build the commercial team?
Well, I'm going to be at the Society of Neurointerventional Surgery meeting next week. As an example, totally agree with everything you said about the ties to the neuro business. But I think for commercial people, specifically field people, our universe is people with carotid stenting, TCAR, and/or neurovascular experience. And there are a lot of people that have that experience, and there are a lot of them that have more than one. I think a lot of the neurovascular companies have staffed up from people that were carrying the bag in the peripheral world 15, 20 years ago when we were launching carotid stents. One thing that has changed in the last 15 to 20 years is the number of these procedures that are being performed by neurointerventionalists. In the 2000s, there weren't many. And today, because of all the stroke thrombectomy that you alluded to, as you said, it's the gateway to the brain. And as a neurointerventionalist is putting a catheter up into the head to treat a stroke, frequently they're encountering carotid disease that caused it. So having people that have some mix of those experiences is going to be really important, because we know from talking to neurointerventionalists that not a lot of carotid stent reps are comfortable walking into their ORs or their labs. So I'll be looking for people that are comfortable walking in there and providing a high level of case support to them.
Yeah, Joe, it's a really diverse marketplace when we talk about go-to-market. You know, the vascular surgery community obviously dominates this with endarterectomy, and their comfort level is TCAR. We made a very conscious decision to invest in TCAR as well as transfemoral approach. We didn't want to play one side of the aisle or the other. As the only company to have taken that approach, we wanted it to be an implant-driven, however you protect the brain and get the stent there by your choice, we'll have that option for you. But as Shane mentioned, the neurospace is particularly important because there's a lot of stenting, happening.
Sure. I mean, you're basically, if I understand, Shane, they're passing by your bus stop anyway.
Exactly right.
And so on their way up there I go ahead and image that, and I go, okay, we got some plaque in there. Great. On the way there, let's drop it in. We're going there anyway. So that works out extraordinarily well.
The part that interested me, and I think it ties into the neurospace, is that all the other vascular specialties, whether coronary, peripheral, are already done in an endovascular setting, correct? Carotids are the only ones that are done really open surgery today. So probably, I think the estimates say anywhere from 70 to 80% are done open. So again, we've got the technology, endovascular, whether it's an interventional cardiologist, neurosurgeon, to your point, or vascular surgeon, we want to create this, this minimally invasive setting. I was just very surprised when I started that didn't already exist, and we have a chance to really shift the surgical paradigm, I think.
Yeah, sitting around all the large strategics right now, somebody's in the boardroom going, oops, because they dropped this market, and it's a very, very robust market.
I think you're right.
Well, Marvin mentioned earlier that this is really the last vascular bed that remains surgery first. And the reason for that, driven by reimbursement, but what we've seen predictably in every other cardiovascular space, every other vascular bed, is that as soon as there's viable endovascular technology with reimbursement, things move quickly to endo first. And that's really literally from head down to toe, whether it's cerebral aneurysms and stroke thrombectomy, through the aortic arch, through coronary intervention, valves, peripheral intervention, they're all 70+% endo. And this is the one segment of the arterial vasculature that's the reverse of that. So what's going to change that is the availability of technology like ours and CMS coverage, which has been in place for less than a year for all patients, not just high-risk symptomatic patients, but symptomatic and asymptomatic patients, high risk and standard risk. So now the reimbursement is there. Technology like ours entering the market at a great time to really make this look like every other segment of the cardiovascular space.
The interesting part of this too is that it's got a very high adoption rate. So this is not any different than anything they're doing already.
Correct.
And we're starting to see, as you guys know, I'm deep into the endovascular world on the robotic side that's emerging very rapidly as well. So this sets up extraordinarily well for that delivery system as well. And you don't have really an exclusion sort of criteria here as you run into a lot of the structural programs on the valve side. So I'd see every single patient that's got any, and this is me saying it, not you, for regulatory reasons, FDA. Nearly any patient that's got a trace of carotid in there, let's put an insurance policy in there. Because what's the liability if a clinician goes in there and says, well, there's some plaque, but we won't stent it because we don't have a device anymore. Now I've got a device that happens to fit nicely into that preventative situation.
Yeah, there's this notion of one and done that I think you're speaking to, which really resonates. And the shift in the narrative with the physicians and the patients has gone from surgical option is really all that I have, and maybe a TCAR solution by way of stenting, but limited in terms of choices to, is this a stentable lesion? Let's start with that. And if you have a stentable lesion, we've got some real options for you, whether it's a puncture in the groin or a TCAR procedure, but we've got the best implant because that's what you're going to be walking around the rest of your life with. And so that shift is what we're really excited about.
Well, it's an exciting time for the organization, and it's so much fun to have a kind of a sandbox that you just loaded up with sand, and you're getting to build it down here in South Florida. So I'm excited for the team as well, and I really thank you, gentlemen.
I just want to know why it took me 4 years to actually get your attention after how many messages on LinkedIn, but that's okay. We're happy to have a seat at the table.
We're here.
Exactly, right? The wait is worth it. Right?
That's right, and I'm glad we are.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your time, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the attention. Thanks, Joe.
I'm Joe Mullings from 160 Studios. Be well.